FBI director cares so little about his job as Kash Patel.
Kash Patel is standing like, saucer-eyed at these press conferences. It's remarkable, but how weird these things are.
Since being elected, Kash Patel has been under attack by the Democrat Party, despite his great work in capturing the Brown University shooter, Charlie Kirk's assassin, and the 2 National Guardsmen who were gunned down, one being murdered by an illegal immigrant. It seems it's never enough searching from America to Afghanistan to arrest this suspect. And after 5 years, Kash Patel and his troops finally know who the pipe bomber is. But even with that, the work is still not done. But take a listen to this.
He will have his day in court. The American public and the world will learn even more information through the legal process.
Despite all his hard work and being scrutinized on a daily basis by the Democrat Party, Kash Patel still had enough time to sit down and have an interview with Lara Trump. Take a listen.
Kash, I'm excited to sit down with you finally.
Yeah, thanks so much for making time.
Yeah, no, there's so much going on and there's so much that you're involved with. I want to start with the terror attack that we saw here just before Thanksgiving in DC in front of the White House, where obviously one service member lost her life. There's another one who was injured. The individual who perpetrated this crime obviously came to the United States after the botched Afghanistan withdrawal under Joe Biden. Is there anything else you can tell us that the FBI knows about this person, possibly about his motives, or anything that you guys have already uncovered?
Absolutely. It's, of course, just one of the worst tragedies you can encounter when service members are shot and killed. I was here in DC on duty all week, so I went to the crime scene. I went to the hospital to visit with the members of our National Guard, and it's a whole interagency process when something like this happens. We're on the scene with DHS and Secret Service and DOJ. Because what you want to do is hold the person or people accountable and make sure that, especially for the families, you provide them some closure. And so we do know a few things, some of which you said. The individual is in this country because not only of the disastrous Afghan withdrawal by the prior administration, but also because they selected intentionally to not vet a single one of these people. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people. That's a broader problem that we're tackling now as a result of this. But when it comes to what do we do here, the FBI's goal immediately is to map out the entire network that exists, everyone he's ever touched or encountered, not just in America, but over in Afghanistan and anywhere else in the world, surveilling anyone in America that may have an affiliation with this guy, going and conducting interviews. We already hit houses in San Diego and Seattle. We seized dozens of devices related to him, laptops, computers, cell phones. We served, I think, nearly 30 search warrants across the country already. And so that's the kind of investigative approach you have to take to consume this information and then properly adjudicate in a court of law.
Well, you mentioned the vetting process, and I think that this in particular has raised a lot of questions about vetting for people coming into the United States of America. The president has acknowledged it. There's an extensive review underway in terms of green cards issued from high-risk countries. So what needs to happen, in your view, as director of the FBI to ensure the safety of the American people as it relates to this vetting?
Well, the vetting is taken up largely by DHS, and so we have to work in conjunction with Secretary Noem and her team, who've been wonderful, to make sure we identify absolutely everybody associated with this disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, and then the flooding into our country of people who were never looked at. So what we do is we take all of those individuals and triage them through all of our databases and see, are there any name check issues? Are there any identifiers that lead to people that are already in custody or that we're already investigating? And so the FBI's focus point is on that, on protecting and preventing future criminal acts and future acts of terrorism, while we work with our partners at DHS to have them give us the information that says, hey, we need to go back collectively and do more vetting on this person, this person, this person,
So from your perspective, though, do you agree with the idea that maybe it is a good thing to pause some of the people coming into this country, as the president has said?
100%. It's the only way to get your hands around this, because as President Trump rightfully stated, these people should have been vetting. We left the Biden administration a blueprint per President Trump. Now, what did the prior administration do? They threw that blueprint out. They said, we don't need your opinion. We don't need your advice. And fast forward, unfortunately, 4 years and change to today, what do we have? A terrorist attack on American soil that could have been prevented, but for the politicization by the prior administration.
Joe Biden let millions and millions of illegal immigrants come into the United States, unvetted and undocumented. That's a war crime to me. A war crime on the United States and the United States citizens. But they never want to talk about that. They only want to talk about what Donald Trump's doing and his staff is doing. Ridiculous.
The FBI has now said, as it relates to Thomas Crooks, who was the attempted assassin in Butler, Pennsylvania, that he worked alone. So there's been so much that has surrounded this, so many questions, people saying, well, we don't know that we feel we have the full story. You guys at the FBI are saying, this is the full story. He worked alone. Can you give us insight into what led you into that determination?
We took a similar approach with this investigation as the one we just talked about. We said, look, the public has questions. Let's go look at everything again, just in case. And so we've been presenting the administration with our findings over the course of the last few months, even 6-8 months now. And the president has been fully satisfied with our findings because this is what we did. We got into every single device that was seized that he owned, read every email, read every contact, read every social media posting he had. And we did a full-blown investigation into, are you, Thomas Crooks, in touch with anyone overseas? And did you have information as to motive or working with others on this? That was the extent and depth of our research. And that's why we are able to today say, based on what we have in our holdings in our investigation, that led us to the conclusion we led to. But we've also left it in a pending and active status. That means if some other information were to come to light in the future, well, we will look at that. That's why we never shut it off. Unlike other administrations, the prior one, they just said, we're done. Nothing to see here. And so we're trying to give the American public as much accountability as we can and transparency, but we can't answer the black space in terms of what's out there on social media and all of that. We're not in the business of hiding anything. What would this FBI have to hide by someone who tried to kill President Trump and did kill another individual and shot others on that day?
Well, you're right. I think that is important and paramount at the end of the day to give answers to people. But Director, this should have never happened. And, so many of us look at what led up to that shooting, what led up to those moments. And we say, how was this able to happen? So now as director of the FBI, who do you look at? Where were the red flags? Who missed the things they shouldn't have missed in your estimation?
Well, look, it's easy to play the blame game, especially looking back at it in 2020 hindsight. But this was an interagency failure by the prior administration. You and I both know that the campaign reached out and said, hey, we need more security for the president and his team. And they refused. So that's step one. When you have more agents and more cops and more people going in ahead of time and surveilling the scene, then you can prevent attacks like this. What's come out now is that the Secret Service and other law enforcement agencies were severely limited in the resources they had leading up to the assassination attempt at Butler. That, in my opinion, is a critical failure. When you need 100 guys and you get 20, there's only so much 20 can do. And so I think, to me, that's the criticality of it.
Do you think we'll ever get full accountability? Will there ever be a person or people who, because of their failure, this happened and they're held accountable, do you think?
I mean, I think for me, from the Bureau perspective, it's criminal conduct. Will we ever get to a position in this investigation as of right now today? Did anyone conduct criminal acts of actual negligence? We don't have information to support that. And that's not saying it didn't happen, but we're basing our information on the totality of information that the prior administration collected at that time. We can't go back there and investigate the crime scene. We can't go back there and collect all the cell phone information, the tower data, the dumps, and talk to local law enforcement and witnesses on the day of and the days immediately after. But what we did was we recreated the scene, and we recreated what would have happened had law enforcement not acted swiftly on that day. Things such as Thomas Crooks actually had an explosive device that he put in a vehicle on the grounds, and that fortunately never went off. But these were other issues that were just missed. How did this guy allowed to have a vehicle, get on the grounds, use a drone, and all these other things? And those are questions we're trying to answer to the best of our ability, but we can't make up answers. So if there's a vacuum, we're not going to fill it by just putting out hyperbole. We're going to just continue to put out the facts, and if more comes in, we'll put it out.
All we know, it could have been the Democrats who had Thomas Crooks on that building that day to have Donald Trump assassinated. Because the hate they have for Donald Trump, you can't put nothing past those guys.
Before taking over the FBI, you were very critical of a lot that was done within the previous administration, and rightly so. A lot of weaponization of this agency in particular for political purposes. And I know one of the things that you really want to focus on is making sure the American people feel great about this agency. So where do you stand on that? What is it that you've done, and what do you think you might be able to do more in order to allow the American people to trust the FBI once again?
In terms of trust, coming back to Russiagate, where I was the lead investigator on Capitol Hill, exposing the FISA abuse, the weaponization, the FBI lies to a secret court, to illegally and unlawfully surveil a political opponent. Yes, that happened with information they basically made up from overseas. So the way that we ensure public trust is to make sure that it never happens again. That's step one. Step two, accountability and transparency. So what we're doing, especially with our deep knowledge of what happened in Russiagate, is two things on a parallel track. Congress, oversight. I'm committed and wed to congressional oversight. My predecessors turned over Comey 3,000 pages to Congress in his 3 years and change, and Chris Wray turned over 13,000 in his almost 7 years. In my 9 months, we've turned over 40,000 pages of material to Congress, not just Russiagate, Arctic Frost, but so many other things that they're interested in. We're going to continue doing that because I believe, as a senior staffer on the Hill, that's the best way to expose the information to the public and say, here, you read it, and you tell us what your feedback is. In this very building, there were rooms that were hidden away from the map site of the building, and nobody had access into them. And once we got into those rooms, we found more information related to the Russiagate hoax from prior FBI leadership. Information that was in burn bags that they wanted to have destroyed, but for whatever reason, no one ever got around to it, or they thought we would just never find it. So we have multiple teams. We've built squads for both Russiagate and Arctic Frost, and we're using the grand jury process, and we are issuing, I think we're up to like 75 or 100 subpoenas already for witnesses. That's what you target first. We also have targets of our investigation, people we think committed acts of criminal conduct. And this, in my opinion, is why the media is going so hog wild over the Comey prosecution, right? Notice how they're not attacking the evidence. They're just saying, oh, so-and-so was improperly appointed. That, to me, shows me we're over the target. That was just...
Bottom line, FBI Director Kash Patel is doing an extraordinary job in year one. Despite all the criticism, the hate, and the lies coming from the Democrat Party. Keep up the good work, Kash Patel. Hey, and by the way, man, take care of that cold. Y'all drop a comment. Do you guys feel Kash Patel is doing a great job so far, or is he failing at his duties? Like, comment, subscribe. Follow God, not culture.